A dam so vast that it slowed the rotation of the Earth and nudged the planet's geographic pole by 2 centimetres. That is not science fiction. It is a structure you can visit. How is such a thing even possible? The answer lies in scale, in stubbornness, and in engineering that constantly rewrites the limits of what humans can attempt. In this episode, we climb from the bottom to the very top through 13 structures, each one forcing the same disbelieving question. How was this ever built? Consider a block weighing more than 1,200,000 tons, lifted and hauled 200 kilometers across the sea, or a wheel of 1,800 tons that raises ships while sipping only as much power as a handful of electric kettles, or a tunnel 1,200 meters long that 13 villagers chiseled through solid rock with their bare hands over 5 years, simply to break free from a village cut off from the world. We begin in Scotland with a rotating boat lift, then move to Germany, where a water bridge lets vessels sail above other vessels. From there, we rise into China's dizzying creations, a spiraling glass bridge over a chasm, the tallest outdoor lift bolted to a cliff face, and a road carved by hand into the mountain. We reach Dubai's palm-shaped artificial archipelago, a Japanese bridge that looks like an almost vertical roller coaster, and beneath Tokyo, an underground cathedral of 59 giant pillars that shields the megacity from typhoons. We examine a bridge whose deck hangs nearly half a kilometre above a canyon, its first cables fired across by military rockets. Then come the giants, Norway's record-breaking platform, a high-altitude highway built at the cost of more than 1,000 lives. And finally, the number 1, the longest sea crossing on Earth, stretching more than 55 kilometers, with an undersea tunnel and 2 man-made islands, engineered to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake and super typhoons. Every one of these is more than concrete and steel. Each is the story of people who refuse to accept the word impossible. Stay to the end, because the closer we get to first place, the harder it becomes to believe human hands were behind it. Here is a machine that lifts 1,800 tons of steel and water to the height of an 8-story building, and does it using no more energy than boiling a handful of electric kettles. That is not an exaggeration. It is the everyday reality of the Falkirk Wheel, number 13 on our list, standing among the green hills near the town of Falkirk, roughly halfway between Glasgow and Edinburgh. Engineers call it the only structure of its kind on the entire planet, the world's one and only rotating boat lift. How can something so massive move so effortlessly? The answer lies in a law that is more than 2,000 years old. The wheel carries 2 huge caissons filled with water, fixed at opposite ends of its rotating frame. A boat sails into the upper or lower caisson, the gates close, and the whole structure begins to turn, raising one tank while lowering the other. According to the principle of Archimedes, a vessel displaces exactly its own weight in water, so both caissons always stay in perfect balance, whether a boat is inside or not. That near-perfect equilibrium is the secret behind the tiny energy bill. To understand why the wheel was needed at all, we must look to the past. 2 historic waterways, the Forth Clyde and the Union Canals, once linked Scotland's eastern and western coasts. Between them lay a drop of almost 25 metres, bridged in the 19th century by a ladder of 11 locks. In time, those locks were filled in and dismantled, and the connection was lost. When Scotland set out to revive its waterways in the early 2000s, engineers refused to rebuild that cumbersome old staircase. Instead, they invented something the world had never seen. Its curving form of 1,800 tons of steel suggests a Viking axe, a whale's rib, or the symbol of infinity. A full lift takes about 5 minutes, and the sheer smoothness of the motion is mesmerizing, as though the giant were alive and breathing. The Falkirk Wheel proves that great engineering is not always about brute strength. Sometimes it is precision and grace. Yet if here humankind learned to outwit a difference in height, the next structure faced a very different challenge: making ships sail directly above other ships along a bridge filled with water. Here is a fact that sounds impossible. The weight of a fully loaded barge crossing the Magdeburg Water Bridge adds nothing to the load the structure must bear. The reason is elegant physics. A ship displaces exactly as much water as it weighs, so the total mass on the bridge stays constant whether a vessel is present or not. This engineering marvel in Germany, number 12 on our list, is the longest navigable aqueduct on Earth, stretching 982 meters. It carries a canal directly over the River Elbe, linking two of Germany's most important waterways, the Mittelland Canal and the Elbe-Havel Canal. Picture it in person, and the scene seems staged. A heavy cargo barge glides along a ribbon of water lifted into the air, while beneath it, in the real riverbed, another ship passes. Ships sailing above ships with no illusion and no digital trickery involved. Why build such a thing at all? Before the bridge existed, vessels moving between the two canals had to drop down into the Elbe itself through a system of locks, taking a long detour. The Elbe's water level often fell, and during dry spells, heavily loaded barges simply could not get through. They were forced to unload, wasting both time and money. The solution, carrying the canal over the river, was proposed as early as the start of the 20th century. Yet 2 world wars and the later division of Germany froze the plan for decades. Construction finally began in 1997 after reunification. The project cost around 500 million German marks and took about 6 years, opening in October 2003. The scale is staggering. A colossal body of water sits permanently inside the concrete trough, with a navigable depth of more than 4 meters so that fully laden barges can pass. Engineers had to design a structure that could hold both its own weight and that enormous mass of water while staying perfectly watertight. The Magdeburg Water Bridge is a triumph of calm, deliberate engineering. But where humans made rivers cross at different heights here, the next structure challenges not water, but height itself, and human fear, as we travel to a bridge suspended over a chasm in China. Thousands of people once looked at photographs of this bridge and flatly refused to believe it was real. That reaction is the perfect introduction to number 11 on our list, the Ruyi Bridge, hidden in the mountainous Shenxianju Park in China's Zhejiang province. When its first images spread across the internet, the assumption was almost universal. Surely this was CGI, a frame from a fantasy film, or an artist's concept sketch. The lines looked too smooth, the concept too bold, the height too impossible. And yet, the bridge is entirely real, and you can walk across it. Why does it trigger such disbelief? Because Ruyi breaks every expectation of what a bridge should be. Instead of a single straight crossing, it consists of 3 wavy, curving spans that weave together at different heights, splitting apart and rejoining like a ribbon caught mid-motion, a double helix of DNA, or the ancient Chinese scepter, the Ruyi, a symbol of luck and fulfilled wishes that gave the structure its name. The result is an illusion of endless movement suspended in the air. The bridge stretches around 100 meters in length and hangs roughly 140 meters above the canyon floor. Part of its walkway is made of transparent glass, and that detail is what turns the crossing into a genuine test of nerve. Beneath your feet lies a direct view of the rocks and the distant, mist-wrapped peaks, as if you were stepping across thin air held up by nothing. The engineering behind it was far from simple. Spans that curve across several planes are much harder to calculate and hold in balance than a classic straight beam. The structure has to carry crowds of visitors, resist gusts of mountain wind, and endure temperature swings, all while preserving its fragile, weightless appearance. That is precisely why Ruyi became less a means of transport and more an attraction and a work of art. A place people travel to for the sheer experience of height and beauty. It proves that modern engineering long ago moved beyond pure function, learning to toy with perception and turn the fear of heights into something aesthetic. But here, the abyss only frightens the eye. In our next entry, someone chose not to cross a chasm at all, but to climb straight up a sheer cliff face. The tallest outdoor elevator on Earth was built inside a nature reserve so beautiful, it reportedly helped inspire a Hollywood blockbuster about floating mountains on an alien world. That contradiction sits at the heart of number 10 on our list, the Bailong Elevator. It stands in Zhangjiajie National Park in southern China's Hunan province, a place where thousands of slender sandstone pillars rise from the ground, draped in greenery and often lost in drifting mist. Into this almost dreamlike landscape, engineers bolted a machine that seems to argue with the scenery itself. The name translates roughly as the 100 Dragons Elevator, and the scale earns it. The structure climbs about 326 meters up a sheer cliff face. Why build such a thing? Because reaching the upper viewpoints on foot means hours of exhausting mountain trails, while this ride covers the same vertical distance in barely 1 or 2 minutes. The lower stretch, nearly 150 meters, runs through a shaft cut straight into the sandstone. The upper section breaks into the open, where 3 glass cabins slide along the outer edge of the precipice, giving passengers a sweeping view over the stone forest. Construction started in the late 1990s and finished in the early 2000s. Each of the 3 cabins is double-decked and holds several dozen people at once, together designed to move very large crowds. Its speed and size made it both celebrated and contested. As an engineering feat, it is genuinely impressive, raising a stable vertical structure beside crumbling sandstone, and keeping it safe in a seismically imperfect region is no small challenge. Yet its meaning is divided. Many conservationists argue that building in the heart of a protected area disturbed the fragile balance of a truly unique landscape, and the debate has never fully faded. The Bailong lifts visitors to the peaks in moments. Our next entry demanded the opposite. 5 long years of hand labour simply to carve a path through solid rock. 13 farmers with hammers defeated a mountain that professional engineers had declared unconquerable. That is not a legend, but the literal origin of the Guoliang Tunnel, number 9 on our list, carved by hand through solid rock in eastern China. The reason such an impossible task was even attempted lies in geography. High in the Taihang Mountains, on a flat clifftop surrounded by walls that dropped hundreds of meters, sat the isolated village of Guoliang. For centuries, its only link to the world was a narrow staircase cut into the stone, more than 800 steps, known as the Ladder to Heaven. Villagers climbed down it for salt, for medicine, for everything the barren highland soil could not provide. The sick were carried in people's arms. Those who slipped into the chasm were mourned by everyone. It was that steady toll of death, according to tradition, that finally pushed the community past its limit. In 1972, 13 residents, led by a man named Shen Mingxin, resolved to do something city engineers called madness: to drive a road straight through the mountain itself. They had no machinery, no specialists, and not enough money for explosives. To buy sledgehammers, chisels, and gunpowder, the village sold its goats and its medicinal herbs. Everything was done by hand. With hammer and steel bit, they clawed a few centimetres from the cliff each day, and by some accounts, wore out as many as 12 drill bits per shift against the stone. For 5 years they hacked at the granite while dangling over the void, hauling rubble away in baskets, working through winter and summer alike. Several men fell to their deaths during construction. Yet in 1977, the tunnel opened, roughly 1,200 metres long, about 5 metres high and 4 wide. What astonishes visitors most are the more than 30 rough windows punched into the outer wall. They were cut simply to throw out the broken rock, but they turned the passage into a gallery hanging over the abyss, flooded with light and dizzying views. Locals call it the tunnel that tolerates no mistakes. Once dying, Guoliang now draws tourists and artists as a living monument to stubborn human will. And if 13 peasants could conquer a mountain, our next hero proves that people can raise entire islands from open sea. Here is something that sounds impossible: an entire island shaped like a palm tree, built from scratch on the floor of the sea. Palm Jumeirah, our number 8, is the largest man-made archipelago on Earth, and unlike the mountain canyons that came before it, this Dubai landmark was born not from rock, but from a decision to challenge the ocean itself. Seen from above, the design is almost hypnotic in its precision. A straight trunk, 17 symmetrical fronds branching outward, and a crescent-shaped breakwater 11 kilometers long wrapping protectively around the whole thing. From a distance, it genuinely resembles a date palm, a tree woven deep into the culture of the Arabian Peninsula. So how do you conjure land where there was only water? The answer lies in staggering quantities of sand. Roughly 94 million cubic meters of it were dredged up from the bottom of the Gulf. What makes this remarkable is that the fill itself relied almost entirely on sand rather than concrete or steel. Engineers used a method in which the sand was compacted under water pressure until it behaved much like natural ground, a deliberate effort to make artificial land strong enough to endure. Construction began in the early 2000s, and back then, the questions far outnumbered the answers. How would loose sand behave in an earthquake? Could the breakwater survive powerful storms? Would the island slowly sink under its own weight? Some reports suggest that minor settling of certain sections was indeed observed, though those figures are estimates and should be treated with caution. Then there is the environmental cost. Shifting such a colossal volume of material inevitably disturbed the coastal currents and marine life of the Gulf. Even so, the island stands. Today, it is a densely developed district of villas, hotels, and roads, where thousands of people go about their lives on ground that was quite literally taken from the sea. But while Palm Jumeirah created land where none existed, our next entry plays a different game entirely, one with the laws of perception. At number 7 waits a bridge that, in photographs, looks like a nearly vertical roller coaster. Number 7 on our list didn't earn its fame by breaking records. It earned it by breaking the way our eyes read the world. Meet the Eshima Ohashi Bridge in Western Japan, a crossing that once conquered the internet by looking like something it isn't. It sits between the cities of Matsue and Sakai Minato, stretching across Lake Nakaumi. On paper, it's a perfectly ordinary road, roughly 1,600 meters long, nearly 12 meters wide. Nothing about those numbers whispers viral. And yet, in a handful of photographs, this quiet stretch of concrete transforms into a nightmare roller coaster, a nearly vertical wall of asphalt climbing straight into the sky. So how does a calm bridge become a heart-stopping cliff? The answer isn't in the concrete, it's in the camera. The real gradient is a little over 6% on one side and around 5% on the other. Steeper than your average street, certainly, but a long way from vertical. The terror comes from a telephoto lens shot from far away from exactly the right angle. Long focal lengths compress distance, folding the road in on itself, and suddenly a gentle climb rears up like a frozen wave. What looks like an impossible thrill ride is really just clever photographic physics. But here's the part that matters to an engineer. Why build such a steep rise at all? The reason is purely practical, and it's where the bridge earns real respect. A shipping channel passes beneath it, and large vessels, tall ones, dozens of meters high, need clear passage. A drawbridge or lift mechanism would have been costly and prone to failure. So the designers chose a rigid frame concrete structure with a high central span, letting the ships glide underneath, while traffic simply rolls over the top. Built in roughly 5 years and opened in 1997, it became one of the largest bridges of its kind in Japan. Behind the wheel, the climb feels genuine. Your engine pulls, the crest briefly hides the road ahead, and for a second, you're weightless. But there's no danger here, only a calm, safe crossing that happens to look spectacular. Tourists arrive just to chase that one perfect frame, and car makers have filmed commercials trading on its roller coaster reputation. Eshima Ohashi reminds us that engineering wonder isn't always about scale. Sometimes it lives in the quiet negotiation between cold calculation and human perception. Here, the danger is only pretending. But our next stop doesn't pretend at all. We're heading to China, where a bridge hangs nearly half a kilometre above the floor of a canyon. The world's highest bridge, at the moment of its opening, was born not from a boat or a helicopter, but from a rocket. That single fact captures the strange story of the Sidu River Bridge in China's Hubei province, number 6 on our list. When it opened in 2009, its roadway hung 496 meters above the canyon floor, a figure that made it the tallest bridge on the planet by that measure. The reason for such an extraordinary height lies in the gorge it crosses. The Sidu ravine slices through the Wufang Mountains like an enormous wound, so deep that if you set one of the world's tallest skyscrapers on its floor, the top would barely reach the level of the road. An object falling from the deck would need roughly 10 seconds to hit the bottom. Cars crossing it seem to drift among the clouds because fog often swallows both the peaks above and the abyss below, leaving only a ribbon of asphalt floating in emptiness. But the true marvel is not the drop, it is that the bridge was built at all. The chasm was so wide and so deep that the usual way of stringing the first cable simply did not work. There was no navigable river to cross by boat, and helicopters could not cope with the treacherous updrafts rising through the gorge. So the engineers chose a method closer to a military operation. According to available accounts, the first guide cable was fired across the void by a rocket, a small guided projectile that carried a thin thread from one rim of the canyon to the other. This is believed to be the first time such technology was used to build a bridge of this scale. From that single thread, finer than a hair compared with what followed, workers gradually built up the load-bearing cables strong enough to hold a span of about 900 meters. Yet the achievement is not only about records. The bridge became a vital link in an expressway connecting provinces, shrinking a journey through impassable mountains from many hours to a matter of minutes. Where centuries knew only the abyss and silence, traffic now flows. And still, human ingenuity did not stop at bridging emptiness. The next structure sets a different goal, not to conquer the void above a chasm, but to tame the fury of the sea and draw wealth from beneath its floor. The heaviest object humanity has ever moved across the surface of the planet is not a rocket, a ship, or a bridge section. It is a gas platform standing in the cold waters of the North Sea, about 65 kilometers west of the Norwegian coast. This is Troll A, number 5 on our list, and it forces you to rethink what scale even means. Consider the numbers, because they sound almost fictional. The structure rises 472 meters from base to top, taller than most skyscrapers on Earth. Its mass exceeds 1,200,000 tons, of which roughly 245,000 tons are concrete and steel reinforcement. Its foundation sits more than 300 meters down on the seabed, held in place by nothing but its own staggering weight. Why does such a monster exist, and why does it matter? Because Troll A had to be built on shore and then delivered more than 200 kilometers out to its operating site. In the spring of 1995, 8 powerful tugs began dragging this behemoth across the water at a crawl of around 1 knot, barely faster than a walking man. The tow took about 7 days of unbroken effort. Engineers later admitted the whole operation ran at the very edge of calculated tolerances. A serious mistake in ballasting or a sudden storm could have turned into a catastrophe for the entire project. The reason all this risk was worth taking is simple. For decades, Troll A has been one of the key nodes supplying natural gas to Europe, drawing it from a reservoir far beneath the sea floor. Up close, it overwhelms the eye. 4 vast concrete columns plunge into the depths, like the legs of a giant, while the superstructure above carries living quarters, flare booms, and a helipad. At night, glowing through the North Sea mist, it looks like a lonely steel island in the void. It proved that people can not only build a titan, but shift it too. Yet however mighty this sea fortress is, the next entry on our list challenges not the water, but the mountains themselves, at an altitude where the air turns deadly thin. There is a road that claims a human life for every kilometre it advances, and it still carries trucks and tourist buses today. That is the grim reputation of our number 4, the Karakorum Highway, praised by locals as the 8th wonder of the world and recognized as the highest paved international road on the planet. Why such a deadly price? The answer lies in where it was built. The highway links Pakistan and China by cutting through the Karakorum, one of the harshest mountain ranges on Earth, at the meeting point of 3 great systems: the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and the Pamir. Stretching roughly 1,300 kilometers, it climbs to its highest point at the Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Pass, more than 4,600 meters above sea level, higher than many alpine summits. Up there, the air is thin, winter buries the pass under snow, and summer sends rockfalls and sudden mudflows sweeping down the slopes. Taming such terrain took time and lives. Pakistan and China built the road together over nearly 20 years, from the mid-1960s to the early 1980s. By available estimates, more than 1,000 workers died during construction, killed by landslides, falls, frostbite, and accidents on the sheer cliffs. Memorials still stand along the route, marking those who remained in these mountains forever. Picture the road itself. A thin ribbon of asphalt winding along the edge of deep gorges. On one side rises a wall of dark rock disappearing into the clouds. On the other, a drop and the turquoise thread of the Hunza River far below. Overhead, glaciers and snow-capped peaks glitter, among them Rakaposhi, soaring above 7,000 meters. The route follows one branch of the ancient Silk Road, tracing the paths of old caravans, though loaded lorries now travel where camels once passed. The achievement is hard to overstate. The Karakorum Highway is far more than an engineering feat. It is a living artery joining 2 nations through a barrier that nature seemed to have raised for eternity. It stands as a triumph of human stubbornness over stone, altitude, and cold. Yet where people here fought the mountains, our next contender was made for a battle with water. Let us go underground to a place where engineers built a subterranean temple that shields an entire megacity from devastating floods. One of the largest cities on Earth is defended from catastrophic flooding by a structure almost none of its residents will ever see. 50 meters beneath the plains north of Tokyo lies a machine so vast it has been nicknamed a cathedral, and yet it holds no worshippers, only the promise of water it was built to swallow. This is our number 3, the GCAN's flood control system. Formerly the Metropolitan Area Outer Underground Discharge Channel, the reason it exists comes down to geography. Japan's capital region sits on a low, flat plain, laced with small rivers. Every typhoon season and every burst of heavy rain, those rivers threaten to overflow into neighborhoods that house millions. For generations, flooding arrived almost annually, sweeping away homes and lives. Engineers answered with a system that is coldly logical. When the smaller rivers rise past their limits, the excess spills into 5 vertical silo shafts about 70 meters tall, each so large it could comfortably hold the Statue of Liberty or a space shuttle. A tunnel roughly 6.5 kilometers long links those shafts to the heart of the design, a colossal underground reservoir about 177 meters long and 78 wide. Its concrete roof rests on 59 pillars, each weighing around 500 tons, and the empty hall genuinely resembles a flooded temple. When the Great Surge finally arrives, powerful pumps, driven by turbines adapted from aircraft engines, blast up to 200 tons of water per second into the wide Edogawa River, carrying the danger away from the city. It took nearly 13 years to build, from 1993 to 2006, at a cost of around $2 billion. Its value is hard to overstate. A silent, hidden guardian shielding a megacity for decades while remaining nearly invisible to the people it saves. Yet where Japan chose to send its water underground, our next entry did the opposite. It rose to its full height and made the planet itself tremble. Building a single dam can, in theory, slow down the rotation of the entire planet. That startling claim belongs to the Three Gorges Dam, number 2 on our ranking, and it captures just how far human engineering has pushed against the scale of geology. According to NASA calculations, lifting such an immense volume of water changes the Earth's mass distribution enough to lengthen the day by roughly 0.6 of a microsecond and shift the geographic pole by about 2 centimetres. The reason lies in the reservoir behind it, which stretches some 600 kilometres upstream and holds around 40 billion cubic metres of water. Why build something so extreme? Because the Yangtze, the world's 3rd longest river, has always been both nourisher and destroyer of China. Its floods killed hundreds of thousands. The disaster of 1931 ranks among the deadliest in human history. The desire to tame that river gave rise to the dam. Construction began in 1994 and lasted nearly 2 decades. The concrete wall runs more than 2,300 metres long and rises 185 metres high, swallowing around 28 million cubic metres of concrete, enough to picture a whole ridge of man-made mountains. Its 34 giant turbines make it the most powerful hydroelectric station on Earth, with an installed capacity above 22 gigawatts. Yet the cost was steep in human terms too. To fill the reservoir, more than 1,300,000 people were relocated, while cities, villages, and ancient monuments vanished beneath the surface. Ecologists still argue over silt buildup, shoreline landslides, and the altered river ecosystem. The dam stands as both a triumph over nature and a warning about the responsibility civilization takes when it reshapes the world. Here, humanity redirected a great river. The next structure aims higher still, challenging the sea itself. Here is a road that deliberately dives beneath the sea, so that ships can sail over the cars driving below it. That paradox sits at the heart of our number 1, the Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the longest sea crossing ever built. Stretching more than 55 kilometres across the Pearl River Delta, it links 3 cities separated not only by water, but by different legal systems. Why would engineers bury a highway under the ocean instead of simply spanning it? Because the delta carries one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, and a solid bridge would have choked the passage of the enormous container vessels that cross it every day. So on the central stretch, the road plunges into a tunnel roughly 6.7 kilometres long, leaving the surface clear for traffic at sea. To join bridge and tunnel, workers raised 2 artificial islands in open water, each acting as a gateway where the route slips underwater and climbs back into the light. The purpose behind all this effort was time. A journey between Hong Kong and Zhuhai that once ate up several hours, whether by boat or by a long road detour, now takes only about 30 to 40 minutes. The scale explains the ambition. The structure holds over 400,000 tons of steel, enough for dozens of Eiffel Towers, and it was engineered to survive a magnitude 8 earthquake and the super typhoons that sweep in from the South China Sea. The tunnel itself was assembled from vast concrete sections lowered to the seabed and joined underwater to within centimetres, a procedure in which the smallest error risked flooding. Opened in 2018 after nearly 9 years of construction, it did not escape controversy. Critics questioned its cost, worried about its effect on the rare Chinese white dolphin, and pointed to traffic figures lower than forecast. Yet it remains a monument to engineering will, where bridge and tunnel operate as one body that outwits the very logic of an obstacle. Here, humanity carved a path through the sea. In the next story, it took on an entire river and, scientists claim, nudged the spin of the planet itself. The heaviest object humanity has ever deliberately moved is not a rocket or a warship. It is the Troll, a platform. And that single fact tells you almost everything about the mindset behind these 13 structures. The reason is simple. Each one exists because someone refused to accept the word impossible. We travelled the whole road together, from the rotating Falkirk Wheel in Scotland to the greatest sea crossing on Earth. And the common thread turns out to be defiance itself. The Falkirk Wheel and the Magdeburg Water Bridge proved that water can be lifted upward and carried over rivers. The Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge and the Bailong Elevator turned sheer height into a thrill for the brave. The Guoliang Tunnel reminded us that 13 ordinary villagers with hammers finished what trained engineers had abandoned. Palm Jumeirah conjured solid land out of open waves. The Eshima Ohashi Bridge and the Sidu River Bridge reveal how far people will go to link two banks. The latter even fired its first cables across the gorge using military rockets. The Karakorum Highway laid asphalt across the roof of the world at a cost of more than 1,000 lives that must never be forgotten. The Jikan system shelters Tokyo underground like a vast cathedral built against the storm. And at the very summit stand the 3 Gorges Dam, whose colossal mass measurably affected the planet's rotation, and the Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, engineered to survive earthquakes and super typhoons. These are no longer mere construction projects, they are statements about what a civilization can achieve. Every great project begins with someone's reckless idea, dismissed at first as madness, and behind every concrete pier and steel cable stand people, their calculations, their risk, sometimes their lives. If this journey through engineering audacity moved you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which structure amazed you most. A new story is already on the way.